I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.
Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. This is the Beyond the Mouse podcast, the podcast for all things Disney for NPR Illinois Community Voices and for the Front Row Network. I'm your host, Craig, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Mr. Brett Rutherford.
Hello there.
And Miss Vanessa Ferguson.
Happy 4th to you. May the 4th be with you, Craig.
That is right. May the 4th be with you, and may the 4th be with our listeners as well. Happy Star Wars Day. We are so excited and so honored to be able to celebrate this Star Wars Day with such a special guest. But before we get there, I do know that there might be some of you listening out there that are listening to us for the first time. And so I do welcome you to Beyond the Mouse, and I also encourage you to go back and listen to some of our previous shows. We have some wonderful interviews that we do. The three of us love to talk Disney parks. We talk Disney movies, we talk properties on Disney Plus, and you can find all the Beyond the Mouse podcast episodes by searching Beyond the Mouse on any podcast app of your choice. Recent favorites for me, episode 100, we had a chance to talk to three people that were integral to the development of a Goofy movie. We talked to director Kevin Lima, to Bill Farmer, Goofy himself, and also to Jason Marsden, who played Max. Also, we talked to Evangeline Lilly this year. We have so many amazing interviews, and what's fun about this guest that we have, he has a tie-in and a connection to an interview that we are going to be dropping this Friday, which is our normal day of release. We had a chance to talk to Disney legend Tony Baxter, and that interview will be coming out as well. Holy moly, I just wanted to get some of that up front and say thank you for listening, and thank you to the listeners who have been listening to us for more than 4 years now. We really appreciate you as well. But today we get to spend Star Wars Day having a wonderful conversation with Anthony Daniels, C-3PO himself. I can't believe it, and I can't wait to get to this interview. Brett, your thoughts on 3PO?
Wow, I'm just a little bit excited about talking with Anthony Daniels. Actually, I'm beyond excited, so I just really can't say anything else, but let's get there when it's time. Yeah, I'm ready.
Vanessa, your thoughts?
I have just listened to the audio version of his book, and it is absolutely wonderful, and I cannot wait to talk to him about it some more.
I will say right up front that I have a copy of his book, I Am C-3PO, The Inside Story. It is such a fabulous account of the whole Star Wars universe, truly, because he is, of course, the only actor to be in all 9 of the films. He does so many different spin-off projects. He has voiced so many C-3PO for so many different properties and so many different mediums. And this book is truly a story of how that career has progressed so far. And it's amazing. So certainly go and pick up the book, I Am C-3PO. But without any further ado, from a galaxy far, far away, here is our interview with Anthony Daniels.
Hello.
Hello, sir.
there.
How are you?
I'm good. I never quite believe these things work.
I know,
Right.
isn't it incredible? It's just an honor to invite Anthony Daniels to our show, and thank you so much for joining today with us. And so it's abundantly clear to us from reading your book, I'm C-3PO, The Inside Story, which I have a copy of right here, that you have such a respect for your fans. And you actually bring up the Star Wars in Concert as one of the best experiences that you've had. And do have a question on that later. But for right now, it's Star Wars Day. Do you have a fan interaction or any message to the fans of Star Wars that you'd like to share with us?
I just like to remind fans, some may not realize, the younger ones, maybe the older ones who were there at the beginning, that Star Wars just opened without any kind of fanfare. There was no budget available to advertise it. So it opened in a couple of theaters, I think. But the people who went in, just kind of mildly interested, ran out shouting. And because of that, they brought their friends brought their friends. There's a phrase now going viral, didn't exist back in those days. It went viral due to the affection, interest, excitement, fun of people who became fans. And I wish there was another word, I've said it frequently. Fans is a word that some people take wrongly. It means they must be crazy. There must be too much. No, it's not like that at all. Star Wars fans appreciate so many aspects of the film in all directions. And it's just a collective word. But I respect them. You know, there are some crazy fans, just as there are some crazy people in the world. And, you know, you avoid them because the huge majority are just normal people who love what I and the rest of the team over the years have done. So on this day, I really say thank you to everybody who has supported me and everybody else over 45 years and counting in a job that it has its ups and downs, its hard knocks and all that kind of thing, but ultimately is a thing of joy and has kept me happily employed for a long time.
That's wonderful. Brett, you have our next question.
Well, first of all, it is such an honor to speak with you. And I was just thinking the other day that in The Wizard of Oz, the Tin Man is looking for a heart, while in Star Wars, their own Tin Man of sorts, C-3PO, is really the heart of all things Star Wars. So it just sort of came to me the other day. But I must tell you that I thoroughly enjoyed reading your book. Actually, in preparing for our interview, I ordered the print copy, and when that was delayed, I bought the digital copy and read that. But Vanessa and Craig said so many good things about the audiobook, I bought that too. So yay, royalties. But Craig and Vanessa were right. And of course, you know, the audiobook is stellar. But from a fan, when I was reading the book, from a fan's perspective, it was very sad to hear about, at least at the beginning, the studio's lack of understanding that you created C-3PO from the inside out. And he's not just some movie magic robot with your voice. So we are here to celebrate you and your wonderful performances, C-3PO.
Thank you.
In your book, you take your audience and fans on a very detailed account of the process of making Star Wars films. You mentioned a diary in your book. Did you start journaling your experiences from the start, or do you just have an astounding memory for detail?
Absolutely did I not keep a diary. I think I tried. I started actually on episode 6, Return of the Jedi, because I had a lot of time in the deserts in Yuma, Arizona. But I'm not disciplined enough. And back then anyway, and the discipline of writing a book is really, as many people listening will know, if you are writing a book, you've got to get up and do it pretty much every day and just make yourself do something. But back then, no, I think I was too tired at the end of each day. You're wearing a costume like that, you haven't got much energy left over. So a lot of it is from memory and from stories I've shared over the years at various events, conventions, and so on, that have kept it alive. But actually, the experience of the first film was so stunning, such a forceful experience, that I think it really locked itself into my brain, and I can really picture some of the scenes that I talk about. And one of the things you will notice in the written book is that I have tried to bring the reader there with me. So I describe, as it does in the script, interior, command center, Death Star, so that you're seeing what I would see in the script, and then we talk about the scene, because I want people to come along and feel how it was, that, you know, the sand was gritty, the wind was cold, the dialogue was rubbish, all these things to make them feel a part of it.
Vanessa, you have our next question.
Well, you are a trained stage actor and you've worked in radio, and we really love your narration and the voices you do in the audiobook version of IMC 3PO, as well as we love the musical transitions in the audiobook. So we wanted to ask you, what was your experience like recording the audiobook?
It was a nightmare, frankly.
Oh, no.
It was far, to be honest, I think the publisher was a little confused about, they'd never done a book like mine. They do guidebooks and things like that. They had no idea. And I'd never written a book, so I had no idea. But I did have kind of ideas of production, whatever. And how can you have a an audiobook, which begins by talking about John Williams' music. That's how I begin it, because that was the concert tour I did. Maybe listeners came to one of the events we did across America, Europe, and Japan. John's music thrills me and everybody else, and was a major, major part of the saga. One of the greatest characters in the saga is John's music. And so with the publishers saying, oh, you know, can't have music or cost too much, I actually spoke to John Williams about it. And all you need is a few bars and instantly you and I and everybody listening knows where we're at, whether it's, you know, the famous Darth Vader signature tune, or it's the Cantina music, you know, dum, bum, 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 bum. That's all you need, and you're right there. And I have to say, recording the book, I had to do it at the last minute, and it took 5 days, and a lot of editing. And I was quite proud of the result and glad I did it. I have to say it wasn't easy. To my surprise, anyway, actors always complain, you know.
Well worth your
I had to
effort.
have
Oh
done
my
it
gosh.
because, you know, it is my voice talking my words. And the book is very much written in the way I speak. So not in whole sentences, and often it's slightly stream of consciousness. But again, I wanted the reader to think, you know, they're sitting with me and I'm talking to them personally. And I'm very glad that you think it works, because you never know, you know. And people are amused that I impersonate George Lucas quite a lot.
You do.
But with great affection, I should add.
I loved that the chapters were shorter in length, because it was like little bits of a conversation that would then feed into a larger narrative. And so for someone, and I know I've heard in other interviews, you say that you would not call yourself an author. For someone that says they're not an author, you put together quite the story.
Well, that is very kind, but I've always had a respect for authors, but never known quite why. Until you write a book, just because you've written a book doesn't mean you're an author. I read books by proper people who do it for a living. I did this for fun, you know, fun. Yeah, okay, I've written a book, and I'm not being coy. I think being able to write a book like a novel, wow, what a thing to know that you've done that. But I have, you know, the book itself started out, I think they said 60,000 words, and then it went to 90, and then it's become 100 and something words, you know. But the other thing that I also wanted to do, because the people who published it normally do guidebooks with, you know, picture here and a little paragraph. I wanted to make it flow like a conversation. And to begin with, I wasn't going to have chapters. Because to my mind, if you're reading something and you suddenly get chapter 3, it kind of is a smack in the face. And then I realized kind of you need chapters to, almost like a bus stop, you need to take a pause here, just get off the bus for a while, yeah, and maybe come back and join it later. And then I devised that by printing the chapter headings in a lighter gray than the text. You could slide over it if you wanted. If you didn't have to stop here, you could read a bit more if you want. And also by making the chapter headings one word. Again, it's not going to interrupt. And always, when I'm writing, I'm trying to infer what might happen next. So you have to stay with me. You know, what's he talking about? I don't get it. Now, oh, I see. Right, now I understand. So it's not always obvious where we're going, because I wanted the reader to do some work as well. Does that sound very high-handed?
Absolutely.
Well,
no, I enjoy it.
It's
I
wonderful.
really, truly enjoy just everything about that book writing process that you've had. Vanessa, you have a question about his other professions that he does as well.
Yes. Well, we are going to leave Star Wars here just for a moment and ask you this question. You are a visiting professor at Carnegie Mellon University. So can you tell us what that experience has been like, helping to craft the students who may one day bring us the next great space epic, droid, or video game? What's that experience been like for you?
It is absolutely enlivening, because the students range from 20 to maybe 35 years old. and highly technical in their abilities, whichever they, from China, from India, from Russia, America, England, all mixing together, often in a second language. And they are particularly skilled in computer technology and programming and so on. And the idea is that they work on projects that may last for 2 days, 2 weeks, 2 months, a year, and they work in teams, and they have to get on with it. They have to get on with each other. And sometimes I think I bring a couple of things to the table. One is I'm older and I've had the corners knocked off, and I've seen sort of simple ways of doing things. And the other way is I'm so simple that in some of their projects, I'm there as a naive user to test what they've done, to see if it communicates with an ordinary member of the audience, the public. Because they're so clever, they often take some things for granted, and they miss a step. We all need, us amateurs need that step. So they've all enjoyed, I think, watching me struggle with their project, whether it's augmented reality or virtual reality or a location-based entertainment. The sort of people that would go and work for Disney, for instance, as Imagineers. So it has kept my mind jumping, because if there's 20, 25 projects, I'm having to leap from one to another on a daily basis. And I'm very lucky to have been given that job.
I want to get a little bit philosophical with you. You have seen so much of the industry change in your career as 3PO, going from the practical effects of the original trilogy. And you mentioned that George really brought in the digital, maybe a bit too much, possibly even in the prequels. And then the sequels, J.J. Abrams had brought back some of the practical effects. But I'm wondering, because Brett mentioned it, you are the heart of the story for us as an audience, in my mind. And I think that is because there is a human inside that droid. And I'm wondering if you think today that same kind of role could be replicated in a CGI world. Do you think that a role like 3PO would be put in with an actor and could work today in the digital world we live in?
Well, there are plenty of examples of. And immediately you talk, I think, of Tom Hanks as being a character in Toy Story. And it's a cartoon, it doesn't pretend to be real. But as a member of the audience, you relate 100% to this character. You take the idea that it's, you accept it, that it's animation, but his personality, his acting wins you through. If you look at a film called, for instance, I, Robot, where you have clearly a CGI manifestation on the screen, but the personality of the actor really comes through. And animators are very clever. They look at themselves in mirrors a lot. They look how people move, and they can create. Bad animation is bad animation. Bad anything is bad. But I think if you can. There are plenty of instances where it's not quite right, where the valley is so uncanny that actually you don't care. But, good for trying. It's always there is the heart of the actor in there. And one of the aspects of 3PO that, has become clear is that in spite of George trying to get rid of my voice, as I talk about, because in recording, for those who don't know, I had a little microphone inside the face, but you couldn't use it as whatever. So obviously I would need to replace it. And in fact, I would redo the voice outside the costume as a wild track so that the editors had something to work with. But it was 6 months later before I found that he had tried to replace my acting with another person. But with me playing it, you had my physicality in the suit, my brain thinking about it, my voice thinking about it, speaking about it, my soul thinking about it. And you had a unity of the character. And that's what works quite well.
Absolutely. Brett, I think he did such a great segue to your question.
Well, yes, you were talking, about practical sets and all of that. As an actor, do you have any preferences to your surroundings? Does a real set feel more real from the onset, and does that jumpstart your creativity, or does it make really no difference?
It makes a huge difference. My first job was on radio at the BBC. I won a contract. Obviously, you don't have things on radio. You have props that make noises and things. And, you know, you wear the appropriate footwear if it calls for feet walking on a wood floor or stone or whatever. So you have that, but the rest of it is just an empty studio. And I'm always amused now that I learned how to work in a radio studio. My first job, it was in fact not speaking at all in this scene. And they said, would you mind doing the door? And so in the studio, there was a big box with a real door, but didn't go anywhere. It was just for the effect. It had locks on it if you wanted to do that, and it had a handle. Here, the arrival was going to be by the handle. So on cue, I pushed the handle down, and they stopped and they said, Anthony, you realize that in radio, you actually do have to make a noise. So you open the door so quietly. So you have to slap the handle and then yank it down. I felt so stupid.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. So in a real set, it is genuinely inspirational. And it is, in films like ours, it's such fun. You cannot believe the Death Star was kind of real around you, big and sort of huge and echoing, black and everything. Okay, in the first film, half the Millennium Falcon was actually a painting on the wall, brilliantly 3D painted, trompe-l'oeil effect. And that fascinated me. I would go and poke bits of machinery that turned out to be made of plywood and painted like it was, you know, metal and whatever. And that has gone right through, and the scenic design and effects that we had in The Rise of Skywalker were breathtaking. And people maybe don't realize that the film industry really, really gives work to artists, genuine artists, whether it's people who can make stained glass or leather or make things out of plaster and a lot of polystyrene now, and people who paint it. I was approaching on one of the films, been so many now, in episode 7, I think, and there were 3 starships in the distance as I walked, and I just sort of totally accepted them till I got close. It was a big sheet of hardboard painted 3D, and it was, how do they do this? Yeah, I just dress up and talk in a silly way. You've got real artists doing it. I do remember when I was at drama school, our stage, our theatre, suddenly got a revolve, a table in the middle of this floor that turned around so you could change the scene or have an effect. From then on, every production used that turntable all the time. You know, one was giddy with watching and giddy with playing on it because it was the new trick in town. And back, you know, with the prequels, yes, George invented so many tricks. You know, he changed the industry, but maybe there were a bit too many. And it's boring if you're surrounded by green walls or blue walls. You know. There is room for both, but you know, a gentle use of techniques is good.
Yes, and it seems like, at least from the pieces of the book where you're working with J.J. Abrams, it seems like he does a really great job of marrying the practical with the digital.
It's great. I always remember, I think it was episode 7, in the middle of this big set, which was outside, there was this lot of green on one side. And they said, well, yeah, that's the castle or whatever it is. We only need the doorway on the set. Why, you know, we're not going to build the whole thing just so that would be a matte painting that marries in with it. And there are a lot of films that use matte painting and green screen effects to, you know, fill in. You've got this big thing, the royal family or whatever it's called, The Crown on TV. A lot of those big grand doorways are just that. There's nothing else. It's all a painting. And it is the marrying of those skills and the tricking of the audience mind, often the audience will fill in a lot of detail that you don't need to put in there. So there is room for both, frankly. It's just more fun if you can walk into the rebel base and go, oh, wow, look at this. Isn't that fantastic? And I did make a mistake actually in the rebel base because it was all so wonderful. And at some point, for no reason, it was a mixture of grass and rocks and things. And at one point I kicked a rock just for the heck of it. It was a real rock.
Oh, and
no. Ow.
That had to hurt.
Taught me a lesson.
Oh, not everything that isn't real is, well, yeah,
I
some things are real. So.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be plastic or polystyrene.
Going back to the fans and the universality of the films and of the universe that's been built from the films, you have such a great anecdote about meeting your youngest fans and them not believing that you are C-3PO or the actor that portrayed C-3PO, and you go into the voice and then you see their eyes glow. And so with that in mind, I asked my 5-year-old son, I told him I'm speaking to the gentleman who is C-3PO, and what would you like to ask 3PO? And he said very seriously and very earnestly, why doesn't 3PO listen to BB-8? So if you wouldn't mind, that is from the lips of babes, from my 5-year-old. Why won't you listen to BB-8 more?
I wasn't. I'm worried now. I thought BB-8 is one of my favorite characters, and so I'm a bit confused about that.
Well, he is 5.
Okay,
so sorry.
More the other way around, that nobody listens to 3PO. But here's the thing about BB-8. R2-D2 did not make a sound on the set. And I didn't know this was going to be the case. I'd worked on the costume for 6 months at Elstree Studios and the script. And all the time I was reading this dialogue between 3PO and R2-D2. The first day's filming out in the desert, there was no dialogue. The remote control unit just tried to knock me down the steps as I talk about. But there was no conversation. And it was some days before I had a scene where I was talking to R2, and it was there that I realized there was nobody was saying anything. I was saying a line and expecting a reply. How naive. And it was very confusing. And I asked George, this is difficult. I'm wearing a suit, can you help by making a sound when I finish speaking? And he tried. It wasn't good. So from then on, he's a director, he's not an actor. And from then on, I learned all the scenes with R2 in my head to kind of play them. Whereas, move forward 30 odd years, and now you have BB-8, this ball on the floor, and without giving the game away, often attached to him with some green sticks was a man, Brian Herring, in a green suit. And they had asked Brian, whilst he was operating BB-8, to also make the sounds. And he just, I think I say it in the book, he just used to make me laugh all the time. But I had somebody, a sound to relate to. The problem was that Brian's face was, about 5 feet higher than BB-8. So I had to remember to look at the ball and not at Brian,
Right.
Vanessa, you have our next question.
Yes. So back to Star Wars here. With new technology, Star Wars filmmakers, they've been able to turn back time and recreate the look and even the voice of actors. And in your book, you describe this moment where you're watching Rogue One and you see the back of a young CGI Princess Leia, but you did not want her to turn around. So we have a couple questions here. What was your aversion to seeing her? And what are your thoughts on the character of C-3PO and his iconic voice that we know and love carrying on, even maybe if you decide to refrain from being in any more episodes? What are your thoughts on that?
First of all, I wouldn't know where to begin to animate a character like Princess Leia, to make her live again as a young person. I felt, as a directorial gambit, not that I'm a director, I did not need to see her turn around. The iconic buns on the side of the head, the iconic dress said it all. You didn't need to see her. It would have been cleverer, because when she did turn around, or the camera turned around, I can't remember, the image wasn't great. It was a bit cutie pie, cutie doll, pink cheeked. It didn't look like Carrie, and it was a bit of a misfire, and it was like a mistake. On the other hand, I adored being one day in Rogue One when they asked me if I would. I talk about it, don't I? Yeah, the director asked me if I would be in it, and what a treat. And there, nobody knew I was there. It was a big secret, and nobody saw me arrive. So I came out of my dressing area, totally dressed up as 3PO, and again saw this shock and awe on people's face, because okay, you see 3PO on the screen, we're used to that, but to see him live in the same room, studio set as you, and I could see through my little pinhole eyes, and that was a good feeling. I do talk about the future of 3PO because he continues. I'm in a studio tomorrow in various ways. And it's difficult. It's a bit, if I think about it now, talking to you, countenancing your own mortality, thinking, I say in the book, I know I will at some point, as we all will. And we try not to think about it very much. Sometimes in thinking about a loved one disappearing, it can be kind of difficult. And I talk about a question given to me by a child in the book, which did give me pause. So we will wait to see. He's too wonderful a character, and not because I made him. He exists to me in his own right. I know I have certain input. I think he ought to go on living, surviving, being whatever robots do, with or without me.
Well, I think I can speak for everyone. I say we love him so much. We don't want him to go.
No, never.
But
And what a great legacy too, and to
yes.
For that to go on.
Yes.
One of the things, and I briefly touch on it in the book, and it's quite a weird thing to talk about. It has come to me in the last few years, literally, over a number of years, how much he has meant as a character to people who have seen the films, men and women, various ages, who have found him a bit of a comfort, because like them, they watch 3PO being disconcerted by people's behavior, being uncomfortable in social situations, work situations, any situations. 3PO has always wanted to be slightly away from it all, safe and protected and not confused and whatever. And I really like that he's been able to make people feel a bit more okay about their nervousness, their not being at ease, and so on. And that's a aspect I never thought would happen, but I can see it, that people recognize in such a big screen image somebody who feels as vulnerable as they do, and who continues and carries on and puts up with things and survives.
Right. And I also just want to add, this isn't really a question, but for maybe an encouragement for others to read the book, that you give such a loving tribute to Carrie Fisher, and we're just really thankful that was included. In some ways, we're you're really taking us by the hand backstage of the Star Wars story, and so thank you for that.
Well, one of the things it occurs to me to say, and whilst I was writing it, it took me a year. And you have to imagine I was writing it everywhere in the office I'm speaking from. My wife, Christine, and I have a house in France, so we travel on a train backwards and forwards. We were flying around a lot. At one point, I was writing it over a Christmas period in our new house in France with no central heating, and I was like Bob Cratchit, covered in clothes, blankets, a hot water bottle, little finger mitts, gloves without fingers on. They were the only bit of me that was peeping out because it was so cold. And then I was writing it actually on the set of the last film, because I wanted to be able to talk about episode 9 without giving away secrets, because it came out before that. But I was also reading or being aware of other books that were coming out. And often you would see really uncomfortable headline shock, revelation that so-and-so did this to me, or and I just, sorry, it's a kind of cheap trick to sell the book. I've been honest in the book, but I haven't told the whole truth, because sometimes you shouldn't tell the whole truth. It's not comfortable. It lets people down. It's unkind. It's unnecessary. I'm critical of one or two people in the book, but hopefully not in a vicious way. Whereas other people, you read headlines in the paper and think, oh, I'm not sure I would have said that. Okay, you sell a couple more copies, but no. So I've tried to tell a lot of the truth. I talk about how hurt I was by certain experiences. But as a journey, which I realized it is, I think it ends on a pretty good note.
Yes, absolutely.
And if I just add to that I have said before, but it's important, it's not just a book for, and this is not a sales pitch. It is not a book for Star Wars fans. I mean, obviously they'll like it, but it's a look at somebody's life, my life, which began in a really mundane kind of, didn't know what I was doing, wasn't allowed to do what I wanted to do, whatever. And then had this extraordinary kind of piece of experience, call it luck if you want, but it was against my will, as you can read. And then it's kind of dragged me along into a journey where I have survived. And other people I know have journeys. They're not the same as mine. Nobody else has played C-3PO, but they've got their own thing. And maybe looking at how somebody has survived weird stuff will help them survive as well, and know it's okay, and know it's the human condition.
Absolutely.
So lovely. Brett, you have our next question.
Well, we've lost another actor vital to Star Wars universe in David Prowse. Do you have any memories or recollections of David that you'd like to share?
Well, it's funny, as his first entrance in the no, it was in the White Corridor, the Blade Runner, which was a bit of a disaster, but that wasn't his fault. It's just the special effects people, the pyrotechnic people, got awfully carried away. Too much bang and too much smoke. So
oh no.
somewhat muted. He was really, his physical presence was amazing, because he was a big guy, and with his black clothes on it and the head, it was quite something to see him stomping around the set. And I realized it's quite funny, anybody wearing a helmet, and who's talking, me or him, it takes the edge off the drama,
Yeah.
So James L. Jones, in a clear microphone, puts all that on. But David did create, eternally. I don't really think there's been a villain like him before. To some, although in some ways, if you think back, 1976 was, 77 when it came out, was slightly more innocent. We're talking 40-something years ago. Villains, I don't know. It was a very, very clever design by a mixture of John Mollo and the art department that created it, and also let's think back to the other aspect of the films, which is sound effects, and that was Ben Burt who made the lightsabers and so on, and the Darth Vader breathing, and you have to realize on set it's quite mundane because none of these things are there. So you're slightly having to use your imagination. You know, this will be fine when it's fixed, do you know?
Yes. Well, it was interesting that both your C-3PO and Darth Vader were men behind these iconic characters. And initially you were unaware that your voices were to be dubbed. So it's a very interesting story in the book that how you were able to keep your voice as C-3PO, but Darth Vader's voice was dubbed by, as you said, James Earl Jones. I'm glad you got the part. That's got to be an interesting situation there.
Of course, the fact that George did eventually have me put my voice back on the movie meant that I have voiced, I think, everything to do with 3PO, whether it's a toy, a product, or whatever, or a cartoon series, any kind of animation. And in fact, I found a toy pen today, which is it's a biro, and I actually put a battery in it because it's a biro with 3PO's head on the top, and there are 4 buttons, and I'm going to just see what happens. So listen carefully. Hi, I'm C-3PO. Hi, I'm C-3PO. I pressed it twice. We're doomed. You just press it once. Oh, let the Wookiee win. That British film crews are very funny. They great camaraderie, and I suggest a new strategy, Artu. Let the Wookiee win. And from then on, the crew just used to go around going, let the Wookiee win. You know, nonsense. And then I remember in the cantina sequence, there was a word, I think the barman says when things are getting out of hand, no blasters. And from then on, the crew went around going, no blasters. But there is a product which makes me laugh. But, you know, that's my voice encapsulated in a biro. Kind of weird, isn't it?
We all need to go out and find one now. So that's
I think actually it's long gone. That's from long
time
ago.
for eBay.
Vanessa.
Yes. Well, you are often asked the question, what's it like being in the suit? So we're not going to ask you that question. If people want to know, they can read the book. But what we did find interesting about that was how you were able to remain calm and not to get too claustrophobic. You mentioned scuba diving training. So our real question is, could you kind of explain to the audience how you were able to stay calm and use mime to create the character? Because by the way, if I ever find myself getting anxious after this answer, I'm going to be going, now, what would Antony do? What would Antony do? So.
Yeah, I couldn't, at the age of, I think 40, I couldn't swim. I'd had an incident as a child and was frightened of water. And I just thought I should get over this. So I took private lessons in a pool with nobody splashing you or, you know, there's danger. And again, you know, that's something I admit to because quite a few of us have fears about this or that or whatever. So I learned to swim underwater. And then I found I liked being underwater. So I joined a scuba club and I learned to scuba dive. And I eventually became secretary of #1 British Sub-Aqua Club. None of this. Oh. Yeah, there's a PADI, much softer, whatever. So I've dived kind of a lot of places around the world, you know, from Mexico to Australia and so on, and all around the British Isles, which takes something. And they're very, very good training over 2 years to become a sports diver. Because if you're 20 meters down in a strange environment and you can't see because the visibility in the water's not good, it's a little scary. But because of the training, you know what to do if something goes wrong. And I learned, and that came in very good stead a couple of times, that I was on the edge of panicking, but didn't. And I talk about one particular time in the 3rd movie, episode 6, where for no reason at all, I suddenly had a moment of claustrophobia. And it stays with me, and I was totally safe and surrounded by people. It just came over me. And trying to just calm yourself, which sounds easy, it's not always easy. I got away with it, because there's no way that there are some people who could not take a role like that, encased. Because as I say in the book, if everybody ran away or, something exploded and I was left there in the desert, there was no way I could get out of that costume. I would have to, I'd have to throw myself off a mountain to break it up, to try and get it out, like you see a cat with its head stuck through, a drain pipe, and you think, no, it needs help. So just calming down, trying to get your breathing back normally and so on is the way to do it.
Wonderful
I will remember
advice.
that.
Wonderful advice. You talk a lot about, in interviews and also in the book, about scenes that didn't quite make it off of the cutting room floor from editing. And I'm wondering if you have one in particular that you wish would have made it into one of the final films, or even into one of the spin-off series that you've been a part of, Legos and all of that.
One of the immediately comes to mind, and I know I talk about it. You have to realize I haven't read this book for a while. I don't sit down and read myself to sleep every night. But there was a scene in one of the prequels where Padme and Anakin go back to the homestead and they meet. He's been away since he was a child, because he went off to be a Jedi, didn't he? I lose track. And they come back and they meet 3PO as a puppet character. He's a naked C-3PO because he hasn't got the coverings on him yet that you would know as the gold character. And there was a scene which we shot, me and Natalie Portman, in Australia, where he explained, she's very nice to him, and asks if he's okay. And he said, well, not really. And he went on to explain that, being naked. And so there was a wonderful end to that scene. And it was a scene in the middle of the night, sort of moonlight, probably 2 moons, I don't know. But I remember it was kind of blue lit and it was lovely. And his little speech was so soulful. And it really gave you a feeling that there was a heart and a soul in there, because he had suffered for, I think, 18 years, not being complete. He hadn't been allowed to become whole, and she fixed it. Got cut out. Had to go and kill sand people, I think, instead. But it remains one of the kind of beautiful moments. And then in the last film, Rise of Skywalker, when we shot, there were so many moments with me and Oscar Isaac, Poe Dameron, I think, the character, where he would, and he used to do it in such a clever way that I would just laugh every time. He would gently infer that 3PO was a complete pain in the butt and shouldn't be around there. And what does he have to come along? And every time we did that, I would laugh. It was so sweet. And most of that got cut out, but it was a delightful relationship. And Oscar Isaac is such a subtle, sweet actor that it worked very well. And that all kind of got removed from the mayhem that was the final film, because there was so much running about and sword fights and things. But sometimes, right at the beginning, there was a line, that I loved, and that just went. But you do overshoot things. There isn't time to put everything in. Lots of good ideas, maybe. But something that was with me and Oscar was kind of long-running thing throughout the movie, and it kind of built and whatever. And it added a kind of soft dimension. Not everything has to be laser swords and people growling at you from behind masks and so on.
So
Excellent.
Your involvement with Star Wars goes beyond the 9 episodes. You've also been included in several spin-offs, TV shows, holiday specials, and honest, my new favorite, Lego Star Wars, where your lines are so hilarious.
I'm so glad you said that, because I sometimes literally I'm crying with laughter, because you can people love Star Wars so much that you can make fun of it, you can tease it. It's like a favorite uncle that you can pull his leg a bit. You know, it's not rude, it's not unkind. It's just being slightly outrageous because we're all familiar and we all love the basic concept. And if anybody has not heard the Yoda Chronicles, which they're on disc and they're Lego, everybody's Lego. And a wonderful team of writers just come up with this stuff. I could never do it. I do fiddle with the lines a bit because they know, they generally accept now that maybe I would phrase it differently or use a different vocabulary because I've been doing it so long. But the basic concept is always theirs. And Lego has been a remarkable a companion, hand in hand with Star Wars for many years now. And as I say in the book, you know, the only object in our home in London that you would recognize as something from Star Wars is a very stocky, very heavy model of 3PO a la Lego. In fact, he's in the room here. He got moved earlier today. And I wasn't going to keep it, actually, to be honest, because I thought, no, you know, I don't want lots of Star Wars stuff around. It's unnecessary. And then I just fell in love with it because it's a piece of artwork and it has the spirit of him there. And so he is there, kind of just quietly in a corner.
Wonderful. Well, my favorite line, I think currently, I'm sure I'll have another new favorite, but C-3PO asked if anyone would like a potato skin. And I thought, oh, that is hilarious. So do you think Lego Star Wars is your favorite kind of non-movie project you've worked on, or are there any other projects that you love?
Very much. I talk about, and I really talked about this earlier. Star Wars in Concert was a symphony tour that we did with really quite high production values of projection and all that kind of thing, and laser effect and so on. That was where I really began to appreciate two things. Not only the fans that came in thousands, up to 25,000 people a night in big arenas, but I also gained a new respect through them for the films, because all these people can't be wrong. They see something that I could not see because I'm in them. You know, I'm too close to it. But I got a kind of reflected sensation from them. I adored that. But then the other thing which people can experience is at the Disneyland parks, where we have Star Tours, and now the reincarnation, Star Tours, the adventures continue. The most stunning piece of mechanical engineering in sync with now digital footage, which gives you, through the viewport of the spacecraft that you are flying, it gives you a one-person unedited view, as though you are really there, experiencing this terrifying and witty, funny ride of your life. I love it. So those are the big things. Yeah.
Excellent.
Brett, you had our next question.
Well, it was interesting. We were watching the 93rd Oscar telecast recently. We saw images of the new Academy Museum of Motion Pictures, which opens this September 30th in Los Angeles. And some of the images of the exhibits, we see C-3PO and R2-D2. So I contacted the museum, and their representative said that both figures are on loan from George Lucas for the opening of the Academy Museum. How does it make you feel to know that your character and film series are honored by the Academy Museum as part of motion picture history?
Yes, it's interesting to be thought of as history, isn't it? It's like when you get a life. Wonderfully, Lucasfilm, before lockdown, I did a talk there to the company on stage, and it was great fun. And then, to my real surprise, somebody arrived with this kind of like an Oscar, but it's actually 3PO slightly, it's very beautiful sculpture. And on the bottom it says, you know, Lifetime Achievement Award from your friends at Lucasfilm.
Aww.
But, oh, and I was really genuinely, it was a good moment. But then I began to think lifetime achievement. kind of implies it's over. That is your life.
No.
You know, it's interesting that you talk about the Disney parks. We're fans of it all, and so we had two questions about Disney parks, and you already talked about Star Tours a little bit, but we actually did have the opportunity to talk to Tony Baxter recently, and we know that you worked with Tom Fitzgerald as well in Imagineering, and I'm wondering if you had any thoughts about working with those Imagineers, and it kind of ties in because, as you said, your work with Carnegie Mellon. You are almost training the future generation of Imagineers. So can you talk about the experience of working with those two individuals in particular, Tony and Tom?
Absolutely. Adorable people. I love the fact you mentioned them. Tom Fitzgerald, I talk about it. He sold me the ride of Star Tours just by moving his hands. He was sitting behind a desk and he was doing, and he made it live for me. He is a real storyteller, but linked to that, and he's a performer. I think he used to, be a puppeteer and all that kind of thing. He's worked there for a long, long time, and he's one of their major producers of the rides, because not only does he know who to get to make the mechanics work, but he knows how to hone a story. And he and I have had such laughs doing that. And Disney at Carnegie Mellon, there's a phrase for this: location-based entertainment. So it's not on your computer screen. You have to go to a place to do this, whether it's, like the Cheesecake Factory is a location-based experience because they design their buildings in a way that makes it more than a burger or a piece of cheesecake. You're having an experience. So there are various ways that you can entertain yourself outside your home. The teams there, I would, like when I was on Sesame Street, I would have stayed there forever because the team there was just such a joy and continues to be so. And I think to be part of a team, and I will admit that if you're playing a character in a film and you are locked away in something that's hard to unassemble, it's quite hard to relate to the other people on the set because they're long gone by the time you've struggled out and wiped your face and all that kind of thing. So I think sometimes in the films I would feel slightly remote, and I was obviously part of the team, but not totally, if you can follow. And so when I experience people like Sesame Street or the Imagineers, oh wow, that, and I think many jobs rely on the people you're working with. If you're a builder, you will enjoy the people because the job itself is hard. But if you're working with a team of people that you can laugh with, it makes such a difference.
Absolutely. Brett, you had another question about Disney parks.
Well, this was about it. One of my favorite moments in the book was when you talk about your visit to Disneyland with Mark Hamill. And this was early on. I mean, this was even before Star Tours. So what was your experience visiting a Disney park for the first time? And can you share any more about that trip and with your fellow actor?
I forget why I was doing something in America. And I'd never been to Disney. And Lucasfilm asked Mark if he would host me there. And I was astounded. From the beginning, you have the street, the main street there, which is done about 2/3 scale, so that kids feel quite powerful. The buildings are their size, and I really enjoyed that. The way people behaved, it was great atmosphere. But the horror story, of course, was one of the rides he took me on, and it remains, and I have done it since, because I remember the electrical parade. It haunted me forever, this strange mechanical music, kind of a dance of death, I felt, because it just rolled on.
Mm-hmm.
And these amazing floats and the characters, and everyone in character, the actors, performers, just doing it full on. And years later, when I was invited to the opening of Disney in Paris, Again, a beautiful experience. But in one of the parades, there was the princess or whatever, and she was flanked by guardians, young like princes, and each one had a kind of flag that they were carrying, flag bearers, I guess, and all looking immaculate and kind of snooty faced. And then as one went by, I caught his eye, and he did the most Gallic shrug, as if to go, what am I doing here? This is nonsense. Totally out of character. I don't think you get that in America. But the horror story was, of course, it's a small world. Oh, the horror, the horror. Oh.
That's wonderful.
No, it.
The world.
I couldn't get it out of my brain, and even writing about it, I began to have it going round in my head.
Oh, sorry to bring that up then. Hopefully it won't. Well, Star Wars has been living in my head today in a very nice way, but hopefully we can, you can not think of a small world for the rest of the day. We can move on to something.
There are people who love it. Generally, they are under the age of 5. And although there is a 5 in my years of life, there's another number in front of it. So,
okay.
But Disney does something for everybody, and they're not called Imagineers for no reason at all. Their imagination is astounding, and the way things are built, the whole experience. It can be a bit irritating if you're staying there and the nth person in the day says, "Have a magical day," and you just think, it's not a good phrase, okay? Especially if you're not having a magical day.
I did have one more question. I mean, now that that we have Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and the World of Batuu at Disneyland, also Walt Disney World, do you have a desire to check out those Star Wars attractions?
Yeah, because COVID has got in the way of so much that I've almost lost track of time, but I've already experienced Galaxy's Edge, such as was there at the time. They were just opening in fact, we walked cold through the non-operational major ride, which I can't
Rise of the Resistance. Mm-hmm.
Yes, and it was, it was jaw-dropping. It's like, wow. And kind of, it felt like almost like being in the movie, except there were no cameras there, because it was very convincing.
Wow.
I've had some amazing experience, physical, visual experience of being in sets and rides like that. And people can do those rides, which you don't have to use your imagination because you are there. And things are happening. So, very excited when things open up properly. Yeah, I would love to go back.
Wonderful. It's been, we have just a couple of questions left, and it's been such an amazing experience to get to speak to you about this. And just a couple of my final questions. First, when you released the book, you had mentioned that Rise of Skywalker wasn't out yet. So I'm wondering, now that you've had an opportunity to sit with that film, to sit with that sequel trilogy, you've heard some of the reactions to that film. What are your thoughts about Rise of Skywalker? Do you have any that you wanted to share?
Yes, a couple of points. The difficulty of being in my position, or Mark Hamill being in his position, or Harrison, people can give rather too much weight to anything you say. Did you hear what Anthony Daniels said about, It's not like that. I'm a human. I had the best time filming The Rise of Skywalker. I worked huge amounts on it. It was adorable. It was the best. No dispute whatsoever. JJ is inspirational, loving, whatever. One day on the set, he said to me, you should write a book. And then he drew close. Are you? Because he's got a brain. And I said, well, yes, I am. Would you write the introduction? It'd be an honor. And he wrote the most.
Oh, wow.
And then to really push it, when I agreed to do the audio book, And he's in the middle of making this film in post-production. I rang him and said, would you record it's the audio book, would you record your intro? Of course. And he did a wonderful job, as you will hear in the audio book. I absolutely love him. That said, there were elements in the finished film. I talked earlier the relationship between Poe Dameron and Oscar Isaac that were not there in the final one. There was not room for everything, and possibly the storyline got slightly more confusing than the one I thought we were filming, because you have to realize we had so many revised pages. They come in different colors. My favorite, and each one was called, pink or blue revision. And then one day it came with slightly yellowy pages, and it was called the Golden Rod alteration, and that was charming. And the story, to my mind, got a bit confused, but I will never understand, however many times people talk about it, why the 3 recent films weren't more connected, why they weren't laid out from the beginning to the very final curtain, because they just weren't. I don't understand that. But I'm a simple guy, there are forces bigger than me. It was a very popular film. People loved the razzmatazz, the energy, the effects, the sounds, the look of the whole thing. It's beautiful. I think people kind of like the original ones. But then, it depends what age you are when you come into these movies. There are people who were maybe 10 when the prequels came out who absolutely adore those, and the other bits, they're fine. Older people like episode 4, or particularly episode 5. So there is something for everybody in Star Wars, and it's a miracle of a composition, a putting together. And one of George's original clever tropes was to take perfectly well-known ingredients, a villain, a princess, a hero, and then funny characters that you meet. And he mixed them up in a different way, in a way that nobody had seen before. And it's like somebody bring out a new recipe for a pizza or something. Oh, never thought of that. How good, it's still a pizza, it's still dough, but you've done something different with it. And George did that. And then that continued as a device.
And over the weekend, after listening to your book, I went back and watched Rise of Skywalker, and it is such a loving tribute to 3PO. The storyline within that, it's so remarkable and so emotional. Again, that heart of the story that we get to see start to come to a close. And I know that this is a tricky question for you to answer because of the way that the industry works and secrets and things like that. So I'll ask it in a very broad and general sense. Would you be interested in continuing to play 3PO in some of these Star Wars extended universe type shows that are appearing for us on Disney Plus or in other properties?
Yes, I would. And as I've said, tomorrow I'm actually in a studio doing stuff. You're right. Your point about the Rise of Skywalker, it was for me quite emotional on the set when Poe says, what you're doing, 3PO. I'm taking one last look, sir, at my friends. And they left, JJ left it, you cut away, but the timing is exactly as we shot it. And it, actually watching it, I was quite upset because I can forget it's me. Do you realize? I'm just watching this character, this friend, this companion of the group. Oh, and again, that was a bit that got hurried. Yeah, I've forgotten about that. The risk to him was far greater as we shot it, that you had time to worry that one of your favorite characters was about to die by all means. That got way compressed. So you didn't worry so much. That was a bit sad. But the moment of saying that goodbye line was like, ooh, it's a bit sad.
Oh, it was touching. I mean, it was, just you retelling that. I mean, tears. I mean, I recall that so well. And I'm like going, and luckily luckily the reboot worked, so, but there was that moment there that it was killing us. Again, the heart, you cannot.
Yeah, and you said that right at the beginning, and he is the first person you hear. I don't know if you or anybody at home can remember the first line of the first movie. Quickly now, come on, think.
Oh goodness. It's funny because
Are
I
you on?
had intended to watch A New Hope this
Oh,
morning
I
and it
watched
didn't
it.
happen. And now I feel terrible about that. I don't want to get
Can
it
we fix
wrong.
that in post? I'm like going, no, sorry.
I can see the scene,
I
but I
can see the
can't hear
scene,
the
and I know you
dialogue.
said, I
see
know you
it.
say we're doomed, but I think that comes a bit later.
Yeah.
It does come later.
Yes.
I'm going to leave it hanging.
Oh no.
Thank you. That's only fair. That's only fair. And we'll have it tattooed so we will never forget it.
But he is the first person you hear in all the mayhem of an attack by the bad people. And I think it, in a way, attaches you to him. And, he's not everybody's favorite character. One of you, liked Luke Skywalker very much. A very difficult part to play by Mark Hamill, because he's just a blonde hero. And he's surrounded by all these wacky characters who are far more wacky than being a hero. And in some ways, it's a very tough role to play because he was totally straight, down the line, innocent, enthusiastic kid. Whereas you've got, the big hairy thing, the big black monster-y bad guy, the little R2 thing, 3PO. I used to say to Mark, you don't act, because if you're in a scene with 3PO, and this is the thing you learn from being on stage, that you try not to literally upstage other characters. You try not to do something that distracts the audience from what that actor is doing or saying. That is important to the play. But with 3PO, I only had to move a bit, and his shininess would capture your eye and take you away from Mark's acting. He did fine anyway.
Yes, Vanessa, you have our final question.
Yes. Well, first of all, I am relieved to hear that we can still hear your voice, maybe in possibly in new properties or new stories. But and that's because in reading the book, each time you said goodbye at the end of a trilogy, it was still exciting because we knew you were going to go on to star in more films, and so it wasn't really goodbye. But as the book begins to end, the goodbyes become all too real. And so you shot your final scenes with Carrie, and then you talk about the letter, a very touching letter from Mark Hamill. So what was it like having to say goodbye to these characters and to working with your fellow actors? Because by the end of the book, it was killing me. So
it was lump in the throat time.
Yeah.
But that last moment with JJ saying very, very nice things about me was very difficult. I didn't want to, but the love on the set there was great. It was what a wonderful team. All sorts of abilities coming together to make something and to make it efficiently and proudly and whatever. And I think I may say, that I had said goodbye 3 times. I said goodbye after the first movie because clearly this rubbish was part of my history now because nobody was going to watch the Star Wars. It came out. So I'd said goodbye there. Then we did episode 2 and 3, and that was clearly it. Goodbye. Then suddenly 1, 2, and 3. At the end of 3, well, that's it, isn't it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Makes sense. Goodbye. And then 7, 8, 9. And 9 really did have that sort of sword of Damocles, that axe coming down. There is no return. And I think the weight of it all, it was a very moving moment, and sort of private, but in front of all these people.
Really? Yeah.
They were very nice. Yeah. So some good times, so some bleak times, but ending on a very good note. And I wish everybody listening has a journey like mine, possibly not wearing a crazy suit, but if it ends well, it was worth it.
Well, thank you so much for your time with us today. It's been just such an honor. And, you know, our goal and our challenge to ourselves at the outset of this was that towards the end of the book, you mentioned, I just wish someone would ask me a question that I hadn't heard before. So I'm hopeful that we attempted that today. And thank you so much from being a fan of this franchise for my entire life. It is just incredible to be able to speak to you today, especially on May 4th, on Star Wars Day. It's just been such a treat. So thank you so much.
Well, they say you should never meet your heroes, don't they?
You've proven that theory wrong.
This does
How
not
about
apply.
that? So,
This has been wonderful.
yes.
So thank you so much,
Thank you
truly.
so much.
Oh,
Yes.
I wasn't searching for praise.
No,
Well, we're happy to give it regardless.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
Thank
Well,
you.
You are very easy to talk to. So, and thank you for thinking. Thank you for not saying, what was it like being, or tell me about. And it's like, no, can you do some work? And, you know, and you have done, you've made me remember things.
Oh, that's so great. Well, thank you.
Vividly. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being a fan. Thank you at home for listening. And to all of you, of course, I say, may the force be with you always.
Did you hear that? They shut down the main reactor. We'll be destroyed for sure. This is madness. That was the line that we couldn't think of.
Thank goodness.
I was
Thank the maker you have that.
Thank the maker that we have that. No, you know, I was just in awe of the conversation we were able to have. And he did throw that on us. And I thought, oh my goodness, how do I not know this immediately? How can I not recall this? But such a truly lovely conversation with someone who has created a character that is so ingrained in not only Star Wars and the Star Wars universe, but also in pop culture, in robotics moving forward. That character has inspired people to go out there and try to make droids or to make technology that would support what Anthony was able to bring to the screen. And it was just an absolutely incredible conversation to be able to have, and such an honor to be able to speak to him. So thank you, Anthony, for everything. And thank you for the memories that you shared with us today. Vanessa, I want to get your thoughts on the interview we were just able to have.
I think I'm just going to cry because he said, may the force be with us always. And I'm just like, okay, I hope it is. And I love him. I love C-3PO. It's like we were talking about in the interview. It is such a comfort when you see that character in these episodes. It kind of almost makes it okay. We love the original trilogy, and so then we had the prequels and we see C-3PO. It's like, okay, it's all right. It's blessed because the golden droid is there himself, so that's okay. And then to speak with the man who is truly behind the creation of this character, as far as his mannerisms, his miming, and his voice goes, it was just an honor. I mean, truly, what a wonderful person, and so giving of his time today. I couldn't thank him enough.
It was just lovely to be able to talk to him about some of his memories. And I will say again, I cannot suggest his book enough, because truly we wanted to try and do the interview as though we had read the book, but we wanted a bit more of those stories. And so it's such a great companion. And we did listen to the audiobook. It's Anthony giving the reading for you. And it's perfect because he truly is able to deliver that in a way that obviously no one else could, his life story and his career. So truly go and pick up the book, I Am C-3PO, The Inside Story. It is Star Wars Day. Give yourself a gift and make sure to celebrate Star Wars Day by doing that, because it is such a well-told story. It really does weave together such a great narrative of what has been an illustrious career, over 45 years playing 3PO for us and allowing us to experience what he brought and has brought and continues to bring to that role. Brett, your thoughts on the interview we just had?
I don't know that I've ever had a better May 4th, and it's going to be impossible to top this one. So Okay, you hear all that? All May 4ths in the future, this is the one you have to top. Yeah, good luck with that.
I don't even
Good
know
luck
how
with
we
that.
do that.
I don't think so. Anyway, yeah.
I think
It
he
was just
really,
amazing.
I think too, he appreciated some of the questions about the Disney parks because I don't know that he gets that. It seemed like he lit up when we mentioned the name Tom Fitzgerald and Tony Baxter. And I think that that was wonderful that he was able to start to recall some of those memories too and be able to share those with us.
Amazing. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was wonderful.
It is time to bring this episode to a close, even though I will be replaying this memory in my mind and in my heart for years and years to come. Before we start to do the traditional plugs, I do want to say I hope you have a happy Star Wars Day, and may the 4th be with you, of course. But if you'd like to find more content from us, from Beyond the Mouse, please feel free to subscribe to our podcast feed on any podcast app of your choice. You can find that by searching Beyond the Mouse. As I mentioned in the front, we are doing things like interviews. We have more fun interviews coming up, but we also just enjoy talking about the Disney parks, the Disney films, and we've been doing a lot of that with our friends as well, and inviting some other Disney content creators onto our show to be able to share their love for all things Disney as well. You can find us on social media by searching Beyond the Mouse Podcast on Facebook. We also have a Facebook group called Beyond the Mouse Podcast Pals. They are going to be the first people to find out about this interview with Anthony Daniels. And also, we like to interact with our listeners that way too. So please join that Facebook group. It is kind of new and it's growing and it's really fun and exciting. We're also on Instagram, Beyond the Mouse Pod, and on Twitter, Beyond Mouse. We are part of NPR Illinois, so you can find us by searching on nprillinois.org. You also can find us through the Front Row Network as well, and you can find the Front Row Network by searching that on any social media platform of your choice. Any final thoughts before we wrap this thing up? Brett, I'll go to you first.
I'm just going to spend the rest of my May the 4th in Star Wars. I'm going to watch everything again and remember this amazing interview that we had. And again, thank you, Anthony Daniels. You've made my 4th.
I like how that worked out well with the words as well. You've made my 4th, right? Vanessa, your final thoughts as we wrap up.
I just truly enjoyed the book. I think the print version is lovely. There are pictures in there that you can see, but it's also worth it to listen to the audio version. There are musical transitions composed by, of course, John Williams, and it is just a delight. It feels like you're in the story and you're behind the scenes right there with Anthony. It was a delight. This interview was a delight. I don't know how we could ever top this day. So I'm just going to say we're doomed.
I love that. I love that. Thank you all. Thank you to Anthony. Thank you to all of our listeners out there. We really, truly do appreciate you. So for Beyond the Mouse, I am Craig.
I'm Vanessa.
And I'm Brett.
And we will see you real soon in a galaxy far, far away. I feel like maybe we should end it together and say, may the force be with you. Ready?
Okay.
Do it.
Okay.
1, 2, 3.
May the force be with you.
What?
Wow, you did that
Nope.
so, Vanessa.
What? Is it May the
We
Force?
can't. This is
Oh.
Zoom, folks. It's not going to work.
What do we say?
Let's try
I'm
it
sorry.
one more time.
Is it
But
May
say
the
it like a
Force
normal
or the
person.
third?
We're saying the force
What?
or the fourth?
The force.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Okay, ready?
May the force be with you.
you.